It has been nearly 1 year since I started my biggest project yet, a 1991 Honda NSX fitted with a K-Series engine and transmission with 2 turbos hanging out the back. Now, I have not touched this build in 1 month. I was waiting on a bunch of parts to come in, so in the meantime, I went ahead and built the Evo 10. That car is now 100% complete, ready to go home to one of you. Today, we get back to work on the beloved NSX build. Being that we are not running the OEM C30 engine, we cannot run the OEM ECU or the OEM engine wiring harness. This here is everything for the engine control side of things. A new ECU, a couple thousand feet of wiring, and all of the wiring connectors to custom build our own engine wiring harness. All of this will get us one step closer to the first start on the twin turbo NSX. Let's run through what we have. I am very excited to announce I will be working with Heltec on this project. I've ran quite a few different ECUs in the past. On that one, we have a Nexus R3. That one is a Motec M130. That one is the ECU Master EMU Black, OEM ECU here on this car. My favorite, my go-to is the Heltec products. ECU of choice is none other than the Nexus R3. I've ran this 2 other times. The yellow Evo 8 runs the Nexus R3, and the all-wheel drive black Civic Type R that also has a K24 runs the Nexus R3. Now, along with that, we have the LSU 4.9 wideband sensor kit. Earlier, I said a few thousand feet of wiring. This here is the few thousand feet of wires. How this works, this side here plugs in to the Nexus R3 ECU, and all of the wiring connects to all the sensors on the engine. Last but not least, we have a new digital display. This here, my friends, is the UC10 digital dash from Heltec, the best dash on the market. Let me show you how cool this thing is. So this here is the factory Heltec display for the UC10. The options are unlimited with what we can do for displays on the UC10. This is my go-to. Looks very nice, but we can decide what we want to do for display later on. Today's mission for the NSX build: install and mount the Nexus R3 ECU. I will most likely mount this where the OEM ECU is located, and build our complete engine control wiring harness. Now, to do that, we need all of the wiring connectors. My go-to place to get OEM K-Series Honda connectors is a company called the Race Spec. We have a bunch of loom to build the harness and a bunch of wiring connectors as well. Drive-by-wire, ignition coils, injector connectors, flex fuel sensor, vehicle speed. You guys get the point. Around 20 connectors total for this entire harness. First step in this process is going to be figuring out where we want the Nexus R3 mounted. I think I have a pretty good idea, effectively in the same location as the OEM. Somewhere right up in here. I believe the OEM sat there, but something like this should work perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and build the ECU mount out of cardboard first as a template, and then transfer it to aluminum, and we will have our ECU mount. Here is my very simple ECU mount. Tab on that side, base plate to mount the R3. Now we're gonna go ahead and transfer this over to the sheet of aluminum. Even though, of course, the ECU is going to be hidden behind that rear panel, I wanted that mount to be as nice as possible, and it turned out phenomenal. That hole there is where the harness is going to pass through, and then it'll connect right here, and we'll be done. One more thing we need to go ahead and fab out of aluminum before we start tackling the harness. So this is the firewall boot that Haltech includes. It's a 2-inch OD, 1.1" ID. If you take a look at the factory hole, it's a 4-inch tall by 2-inch width. So what I'm gonna do is build a nice aluminum plate, bolt the plate to the firewall, drill a 1-inch hole for this to pass through. It'll be nice, clean, simple. I've been trying to find a 4x2 oval boot to fit that hole to just replace this. I can't seem to find one. Let's just make this work. The firewall grommet setup is now complete. There's the plate, Haltech harness runs through. On this side is all of the wiring we need to connect to the engine. And these guys plug right into the R3. So all the easy stuff is done. Firewall, done. ECU mount, done. Now the hard part, running all of this to the proper sensors, to the coils, to the injectors, getting everything trimmed to length, getting it loomed, and getting all the connectors installed. So the first thing I'm gonna do is figure out where exactly in the engine bay I want all of this routed. I got all of the wiring routed where it's gonna go, roughly. As you guys can see, it's still a mess. I have everything trimmed down to the proper length. Now we need to go ahead, pull the harness off the car, and do all of the looming and wiring connectors. That first breakaway is gonna be for the AC compressor, the alternator, knock sensor, and map sensor. Next breakaway will be up here. That'll be for injectors, drive-by-wire, throttle body, the ignition coils, and then the harness will run underneath the intake manifold and have a breakaway back here for the VTEC, oil pressure, flex, things of that nature. So what we're gonna do here is install the loom with the heat shrink, strip the wire, get the connector on, move the heat shrink to where it looks nice and clean, heat shrink it, and then move on to the next section. So we have flex fuel, map sensor, coolant pressure, knock sensor, AC compressor. This section was the easy part. As you can see, we have a very long ways to go. Let's get her done. The entire harness is now loomed and heat shrunk. The last thing we need to do is slap on all of the wiring connectors, and we will have a complete engine harness ready to go in the NSX. I know it may not look like much. I'm here to tell you guys, I'm 14 hours deep into building this engine wiring harness. So this is the firewall boot that plugs into the ECU. This is gonna be all the stuff for the cabin. So this will be throttle pedal, rolling anti-lag switch, rotational idle, all the fun stuff. Wiring for a strain gauge if we ever go dog box or sequential. Wiring comes through, first breakaway here, next breakaway here, and then all the rest of the wiring runs over here. Before this beautiful harness goes onto the car, we have a few little things we need to install. So I picked up a Mac 4-port boost controller. We are running a 4-port on here instead of a 3-port for more boosties, and a billet little boost control mount, GM flex fuel sensor with a nice little billet flex fuel mount. So let's get these two guys installed, and then our 14-hour engine harness can go on. Harness is plugged into the ECU. Now, of course, we still have this whole end to deal with. Can't wire that up until the interior is back in the car with the throttle pedal and all that stuff installed. But for now, what we can do is go ahead and power on the ECU to make sure it actually works. So what we need to do for that is run a power and ground cable. It's gonna go right from the Nexus to the front of the car where the battery sits. So I have the battery cables from the ECU connected to a battery. All we need to do is connect the pink wire in this harness here, which is the trigger wire to trigger on the ECU, and our ECU should, if I did it correctly, should get power. Look at that, we have ECU power. I'm gonna go ahead and try and plug into the laptop and do something like calibrate the throttle body to see if anything in my engine harness works. At least I know I did one thing right. Calibration on throttle body is good. Calibration on pedal is not. Of course, we don't have a pedal installed, so that makes sense. One of the most important, most time-consuming things to get this NSX fired up is now complete. What else do we need to start the car? Well, we need a fuel system, so injectors, the fuel tank back in the car, fuel pumps, all the lines made. If I want to start it properly and not ghetto it together, we'll need the ignition switch back in the car. Of course, I can just jump the starter if I want to briefly just hear it run, which maybe I'll do, maybe I won't. But we're getting close. We are getting very, very close to the first start on the 91 NA1 Twin Turbo NSX, which is very exciting. It's been almost a year in the making of tinkering on this car, off and on, and we're almost ready for the first start.